Good morning, friends and fellow traders. This is Doug Campbell with Right Way Options, and this is the Morning Market Prep video for November 4th, 2024. Well, only one day to the election, and you've got to imagine that the market is kind of holding its breath for the outcome. We've got quite a little bit going on today, so let's take a look. First off, if we take a look at overnight activity, Asian markets ended up mostly higher last night. We had Shanghai up, Taiwan was up, Hong Kong up 0.30%. Shanghai was up 1.17%. India was down 1.27%. The Nikkei was down 2.63%, and Australia was up 0.56%. European markets this morning are green across the board, but pretty modestly green. We have the DAX up only 0.1% or $1.69. FTSE is up the best, up 52 points at 0.64, and we have the CAC up 18 points at 0.25%. U.S. futures also up across the board this morning, but a bit on the modest side. Dow up 41 points at 0.10%. S&P 500 futures up 11.5 points at 0.20%, and NASDAQ futures up $33, up 0.16%, as we wait for a big round of earnings today and the inclusion of NVIDIA into the Dow coming on Friday. Let's take a look at what we've got going on in other places. If we take a look at oil this morning, oil looking sharply higher this morning. OPEC has decided it's going to delay its output hike, and that's pushing oil prices up. Right now, we've got oil up this morning 3.09% or $2.16 a barrel at 71.65 a barrel. Brent crude is up $2.12, 2.90%, 75.22 a barrel. And we have natural gas still struggling in here. UNG just can't catch a break, continuing to move lower, new lows here recently, driving on down. If we take a look at gold this morning, well, gold is kind of hanging in there. We've got gold up just ever so slightly here on the day. Right now, $2.10 an ounce on gold futures. Silver also just a little bit higher on the day. Copper is moving up here this morning and finally giving a little bit of help, and maybe we might be catching some support right in here on FCX. You might want to watch that if this happens to be able to get enough energy to break that downtrend in the chart. And then platinum and palladium moving up, but after the big pullback here, that's not much of a move to the upside. Probably just a little bit of rest and maybe trying to catch some of this support in here on the chart. So let's take a look at our bonds here this morning. Our bonds, by golly, we're having a little tiny pullback here this morning on bonds. The 2-year bond is at 4.15%, but the 10-year bonds 4.27%, and the 30-year bonds 4.47%. You could certainly understand why those bond yields are struggling in here with the uncertainty of the presidential election. And right now, our market being so strongly bullish here, it looks like the bond market is kind of disagreeing with such a bullish run in the stock market. So watch that carefully if something were to break. Now, also, if we take a look at crypto markets here this morning, we've got Bitcoin just slightly lower here this morning at 80.64 dollars per share, down on the day here in Bitcoin, not per share, per coin. Ether, however, is up 0.25% or 6.26 per coin. We've got kind of a mix here as well with XRP, Litecoin just slightly up. So just a little bit of mix in some of those this morning. So what does all that mean for the day? Well, how about we settle in? Let's buckle up. Let's get ready for the Monday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. Let's take a look at these charts and see if we can gain a little inspiration, a little information about how the market may perform today. Remember, we want to look at these markets or look at these charts as for what they are, not for what we want them to be. And we also want to remember that if we look at these with a bias, we can taint our ability to see the technicals in the chart. Now remember, we do have a big situation here coming up in the market that could easily create some choppy conditions today. So be pretty careful. Remember, last day of voting here in the United States, and of course tomorrow we will get the results of that move. So just be careful here. In the United States, we could easily see some volatility. If you remember, we commonly get some overnight volatility as we move into those election processes. So watch carefully. Now, let's take a look at what we've got going on here right now. If the bulls can continue to find inspiration, well, you can see this resistance I've got marked right in here. We've shot up there on a Friday and then backed away with kind of that little shooting star type pattern right up here along that downtrend. So we'll want to be watching that carefully. If we can push up into here, then we need to see enough energy that we can push on through into up here into this next level and deal with some of this resistance up here so we can get right on back up into this area. Is it possible? Certainly possible, but we'll have to watch for this market to be a little bit choppy today in that uncertainty as we wait for those election results. So kind of watch that carefully here. Now, remember, if we see some bearish activity here in the market, if those bears continue to find some inspiration, well, I would say maybe pushing down into here. Notice we're going to test the top of that candle, the low of that candle. And if that were to break, then I'm going to suggest coming back down into this area. We do have a really good area of price support right in this area here, so watch that carefully. And remember that that would be a failure of the 50 if we were to move back down in there, and that could raise a little bit of concern. Now, if we take a look at our SPY, also feeling a little bit of uncertainty here in the market. We've got 2 inside days after this big black candle came into play, and we did try on Friday to get up there and test the top side and ended up giving that away by the end of the day. So if the bulls find inspiration, you can see where we need to go. Need to see if we can break through that up there. If we can, then we might have that opportunity to fill this gap in here, pushing just a little bit higher to fill that gap and come up in the underneath side of that resistance of that price action. Passing through there up to the top side, and then of course beyond that point we might be reaching on up here to see blue sky highs and all-time highs in the SPY. Now if the bears were to come up with some inspiration here today, well, breaking or pushing down to test the bottom of that candle would be the first place, and then breaking below that, I'm going to suggest we would come back down into some of this area of price support. There may be a little bit price support right in there, but I wouldn't rule out the possibility of us pushing on down to test this bigger area of price support if the bears were to get going. So watch that carefully. Breaking down below there would probably raise some concern. Even though we have a pretty decent little level of price support right there, probably would raise a little fear in the market. And one of the reasons that would be the case is that would be a failure of the 50-day moving average. So watch carefully for that possibility. And then if we look at our QQQ still hanging in there, looking good. We got the news that NVIDIA is going to be put into the Dow, which means now the Dow Jones Industrial Average is almost all tech when it comes to the size of the companies in the index. We're essentially a tech index in the Dow anymore. So watch that carefully, and you can watch right here if those bulls find inspiration here. We need to pop through this little resistance area right here, and then we can come on up and see if we can catch the top side of that candle. We tried on Friday and then just couldn't hold. So watch that carefully. Push up into here. Next resistance area, as you can see, is right there, really close, pushing on up. And of course, if we get up into here, we're going to have to deal with this trend that we slipped right here. We're going to have to deal with that and see if we can push up through there. About the same time, we'll be trying to reach out here and break to those all-time highs in the Qs. Now, if the bears were to find inspiration today, first off, I would suggest the low of Friday's candle, and then I'm going to be looking right here at that big black candle to see if it holds that low. So watch that. If we were to break down below there, however, I would suggest the possibility we could come all the way down into this bigger price support of the chart. Now remember, if we were to break down through there, that would probably raise some considerable fear. And looking here, that would be a test and likely a break of that 50-day moving average. So watch that carefully. And then of course, if we look at our Russell IWM's been struggling quite a bit. It suffers from a lack of momentum here in the market, and particularly when the Nasdaq is moving, it seems to just suck all the air out of the Russell. But if you look right across here, there we've got a little downtrend showing up. We had a lower high followed by a lower low. Now we're trying to hang in here on this area of price support and of course this upside trend. So if the bulls can find inspiration in here, then we need to start progressing back up to see if we can deal with this resistance and that downtrend. Breaking through there would be a good deal. That would reverse this little downtrend possibly, and we could push on up and test this area of resistance in the chart. Now, if the bears were to find inspiration, well, you can see it breaking back down below that black candle. We could push down into this support area and trend. Holding there, probably no worries or concerns. A break below there would probably raise a little bit of concern. As you can see, we're just barely holding onto our 50-day, and a breakdown below that black candle would be a potential failure at the 50. Let's take a look at our VIX. Now, our VIX has been just slowly and incrementally rising here. And you can see on Friday we did pull back a little tiny bit with that bullishness, but it just really wasn't all that inspiring. And you can see we have made an upside move here, a higher low in that chart. Now we've got some price support right across here in that chart. And if those bears, if those bulls can find inspiration, we need to break this back down through here and maybe start coming back down to this area. That would relieve some of that concern about the volatility that could creep up here on the election. Now, if we don't do that and those bears have something to say about it, well, look right through here. If we were to break through up here with some fear, that could really spark a little bit of selling as that fear starts to rise, and we're really going to be confirming this higher low in here and maybe start seeing that really shoot up. And of course, this election is so contentious, I think anything is possible. So keep a close eye there on the VIX. And then if we look at our T20s, our T2122, probably our best opportunity to see a little bit of a relief rally here in the market. You can see that big push that we had on Friday to the upside really didn't produce anything here on this. Remember, this is the 4-week new high, new low ratio. So we didn't really perform all that well on Friday. And I'm kind of thinking there's a really good chance we could be pretty darn lethargic today as well, waiting on that presidential election. So watch this carefully. But if the bulls find inspiration here today, we certainly have plenty of upside opportunity for them to push if they can find something to grab onto. Now, if the bears find some opportunity, remember we still have a little bit of downside opportunity as well if those bears were to get going. And then if we take a look at our T2108, well, T2108 didn't have much to say on Friday either. We ended up on T2108 essentially flat, down here around 38% of the stocks holding above their 40-day moving average. Not a great day, despite the fact that we got the impression looking at the indexes that things were pretty darn bullish. So keep an eye on this. Bears are still milling around and showing some strength. And that uncertainty certainly showing itself here in this chart. And T2107, very much the same thing. It actually ended up moving a little bit lower here, percentage of stocks above the 200. We're still holding above 50%, so that's a good sign, and we got some support here on that 50% area. So if the bears were to have anything to say, maybe we'd push on down there and bounce off of that 50%. But let's watch that carefully. Maybe the bulls can grab onto this and push us up into some resistance here in this chart. And then our T2101, well, we can kind of see what we've got going on here. It's usually pretty typical after we get past the big tech earnings reports, we start to see corporate buybacks in those big techs really begin to pick up, and that helps breadth pick up here on the day. But in that big push on Friday, we didn't see that breadth improve. As a matter of fact, we ended up seeing it move a little bit lower on the day. So keep an eye on that. If those bulls can find inspiration, we need to see if those bulls are going to keep the market green and keep pushing up. We need to see that breadth following through on that side. We don't want to continue to see green bars in the market and seeing that breadth fading away, because that could embolden those bears to attack. So watch that carefully. Let's take a look at our economic calendar for today. And our economic calendar, not a whole lot going on in here. We've got those motor vehicle sales this morning. We're going to get factory orders here today. Taking a look at those factory orders, we're looking at a negative 0.05 on factory orders. But you know what? For some reason, the market doesn't care. This has been one of the almost 2 years of declines or contraction in manufacturing, and the market has no concern about that whatsoever. It just wants to be bullish. And maybe we need to take a little bit of a cue from Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has raised his cash hoard to a remarkable level, $325 billion. He is not even buying back his own stock in Berkshire Hathaway because he believes it's overvalued. So our market seems to be a little bit on the stretch side, but retail and everyone keeps piling in. And we see these major problems here in the market. I'm just bringing that up. I'm not trying to predict something's going to happen here at all, but I would be very, very careful in really doing much buying, particularly ahead of the election, and just kind of keeping in mind that somebody like Warren Buffett is usually pretty good at saying something's wrong here. So watch that carefully. And then after that, we've got some bond auctions here that certainly will be important to watch because we've been having some problems with those bonds. As we look into Tuesday, notice in here we got an international trade number, ISM numbers. On Wednesday, we're going to begin the FOMC meeting, which is kind of strange. I'm guessing because of the presidential election, they are not going to start that until Wednesday. But as you can see, we've got petroleum status in here, mortgage applications as normal. Of course, our presidential election in here, we'll be getting the results and expecting some volatility. And then on Thursday, we're going to ramp up a little bit here. Jobless claims, productivity and cost, natural gas reports, the FOMC announcement, and their Fed conference, largely expected, very largely expected, a 25 basis point cut. So keep an eye on that. Consumer credit, Fed balance sheet, and then on Friday, we'll be looking at some of those Fed speakers starting to get going again. Here, Bauman will be speaking along with a consumer sentiment, and Baker Hughes Riggs. So watch this week. I would be expecting some volatility. This is a very contentious election. No matter who wins, there's likely going to be ramifications to the market. So be prepared. Let's take a look at our earnings calendar here for the week, and our earnings calendar is a big one. As a matter of fact, so big, guys, that there's no way I can cover them all. So make sure you click the link just below the title of the video. That'll take you back to the morning blog where you can catch that full list. This morning we're going to hear from things like AMG will be reporting. We've got CC reporting today. We're going to hear from YUMC. We've got Fox A reporting. We're going to hear from Ben. We've got NYT in here reporting. So a few things like that here this morning. This afternoon, we've got EGHT in here. We've got PLTR reporting. We're going to hear from ILMN in there. Let's see. We've got O is reporting this afternoon. VNOM will be in there. WOW will be reporting. So quite a few reports this afternoon. But as far as major market moving reports, we're really not having too many of those at all today, so kind of keep that in mind. Let's take a look at some stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, everyone, if you could do me that quick favor, if this is the first time you've seen these videos, please click that subscribe button on YouTube and also click the bell icon when it pops up so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And if you find these videos to be useful or helpful, if you could do me that favor, that'd be smash that like button, leave a brief comment. That helps the channel to continue to grow. Thank you so much for everyone who does take the time to do that. I know, I truly understand it gets monotonous trying to write a little comment, but on every single day because of this daily video. But please understand, it does help in supporting the effort of putting these videos out every day. So thank you to everyone who does. And remember, you can just leave an emoji and that counts as interaction with the video. Let's take a look at some stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, everyone, remember, these are not recommendations to buy or sell any security. You need to be very careful here in the market. Do your own due diligence and be watching very carefully for some volatility. Remember, follow your trading rules and your guidelines. You should never, ever blindly follow anyone else's trade ideas. So let's take a look at a couple ideas in here that we will certainly want to be paying attention to. Whether they're going to be good trades or bad trades, I can't say with the craziness of this market. But one of the things I want to be pointing out is some of these big tech reports. We had a little bit of uncertainty coming into these big tech reports. And of course, we've seen like AMD really reverse here to the downside. Now, don't chase this down, but what I would suggest is any rally back up that comes into contact with that trend and downtrend, resistance and downtrend, I would be watching for that next potential opportunity to the downside. We're seeing a little bit of the shine come off of these here lately, and sometimes when that shine starts to come off, it can get a little bit exaggerated in the sell-off. So watch that carefully here in AMD. When we take a look at Microsoft, let's say the same thing here on Microsoft. Be really careful in chasing in on this and pushing this guy right back up, because we might run into this trend here and this price resistance in this area, and then see that roll over to the downside. You want to keep in mind in here that we have failed through our 50-day moving average, and our 200-day moving average is right in there as well. So we really do run that possibility that the 50 crosses back down through that 200, and we get a little bit of pressure here on Microsoft. So keep an eye on those. I would be really cautious in here on some of those. Now, things that certainly don't have to be all that cautious on for an upside move, let's take a look at Carvana. Nice little pop here on its earnings report. It is resting, pulling back, might fill that gap, come back here into trend, and then I'd be watching for that next opportunity there for Carvana, maybe to the upside. Watch that closely. Take a look at EQT. Now, EQT is oil and gas, and we've seen that today we're getting a bump here in oil and gas, and this is one of the oil and gas that's actually setting up in a really nice pattern, and you can see nice little upside trend, little resting pullback coming into here. If we hold this support and trend with this buying coming into oil today, I'd keep an eye on that for that opportunity for that to move on up. And you can look at other places, but if you take a look at like ExxonMobil, well, there just isn't any pattern here that's a bullish pattern. A big old bearish engulfing cat pattern in here on Friday. We're trying to pick up a little bit, but I would be looking for those stocks that are showing that bullishness and holding in there on bullish patterns. Even take a look at FANG here. FANG's going to be reporting today, this afternoon, but watch that carefully in here. As you can see, trying to perk back up, but we really don't have a bullish pattern in here to trade. Lots of resistance above in that chart, so wait on those kind of things in that area of the market. Now, if we take a look at things like Bumble, very nice looking chart. I really think everyone should be paying attention to this. It has taken quite a bit of time for this to slide out there to the trend, but you can see on Friday getting a nice little pop in there on Friday. Any follow through on that, I would say Bumble could be a potential buy. Watch that closely. Really liking the way AT&T continuing to hold up here in this consolidation. I know it's an old boring stock. Nobody wants to trade old boring stocks anymore, but that old boring stock pays a really good dividend, and if it can find some bullishness in here, it can easily stretch on out. Keep an eye on AT&T. It looked like for a while we were going to get something really good going here in some of these cannabis stocks, but they really fell apart. Rallied up big on Friday. Watch that carefully on this Friday move. If it pops up into here and starts to show failure, I would watch for a potential short. It's going to have to get all the way back up and hold a higher low before I'd be interested in it again for any kind of long trade. And I want to also warn you that there are some trades that could be setting up on inverse ETFs. So when we take a look at DOG here, this is this is not leveraged, it's 1-for-1 inverse on the Dow, and you can see we've broken the downtrend. We held a higher low in here, pushed on through. If we can hold some support in here, notice we've got an inverted head and shoulders pattern setting up here on DOG. I would watch that carefully for that possibility. If those bears were to get going in here, there's an opportunity to make some money here on this inverse ETF with that push to the upside. So watch that close. And you could also look at things like RWM. RWM is the inverse ETF, one by inverse ETF on IWM, and you can see there's a very well-defined inverted head and shoulders pattern in here. Our neckline would be right up through here. I would watch that carefully. A pop in here could really get things going here on RWM. If you start to see that market roll over, maybe start looking at some of these stocks for a little bit of upside opportunity as well. Take a look at Airbnb. Now, Airbnb holding a nice, beautiful pattern in here, nice little resting consolidation. Got a little bullishness in there on Friday, and you can see in the pre-market it's trying to follow through. So watch for that opportunity that could follow on through to the upside there. I was going to say Intel might be something to pay attention to, but now we're going to kick Intel off of the Dow on Friday. So when in that case, we're likely going to see a lot of deleveraging from the institutions from Intel. This looked like it had that opportunity that it could push on through, come up here and maybe work on filling that gap. But so far, the news on this could easily push Intel lower. So watch that carefully here on that. Take a look at VSCO. VSCO, beautiful move. We identified this chart last week in RWO, and nice little consolidation out here to trend. Popped 2 days running. Now breaking through this resistance up here, just watch for the possibility of a little bit of rest breaking through that resistance. But what I want to make note of in here is this is about a 2-year-long bottoming formation. So if this can hold up here, hold a higher low in a little bit of a rest, I'd look for some more upside in VSCO. There may be some opportunity there coming. So there's a few stocks for you to be paying attention to. I'm running this video a little bit long. I want to wish you all a fantastic day. Thanks so much for being here. Remember, be kind of careful today. We've got the election just around the corner, and everything could get a little bit funky in price action around that election. We could see some big price moves, so kind of keep that in mind as we move through the day. And I think I misspoke. I said today is the last day of voting. That's not true. We still have today and tomorrow. So if you haven't voted, get out there and vote. That is one of our greatest rights. And it is our obligation as a citizen of the United States to go vote your conscience. So get out there and vote. Make your vote count. Y'all take care. Be safe. Have a wonderful day. And I'll see you right back here bright and early Tuesday morning. Take care, everyone.